Happening now, Senate leaders paying tribute to longtime Alabama Senator Richard Shelby, who is retiring from the Senate in January.
Shelby, of course, is Alabama's longest serving senator in the history of our state. And as he makes the transition, Senator-elect Britt is making history as the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate from Alabama. Our Jonathan Hardison is live and on your side from Washington. Jonathan, you spoke to the senator-elect just a couple of hours ago.
That's right, Sarah, and certainly the legacy of her predecessor, a man she once worked for, Senator Richard Shelby, very much on her mind today, as Senator Shelby this afternoon walked down to the Senate floor for perhaps the final time to make public remarks and talked about bipartisanship, something that he knows very much, having come to Washington as a Democrat in 1986, switched parties to Republican in 1994, and today saying both parties need to learn how to work together.
It's important because it's good for the country. Yes, and it's important because it brings people together. It's important because we all have our differences in philosophy, but the country, I believe, should be first. Nation first.
So how do you fill the shoes of a man like Senator Richard Shelby? That's something Senator-elect Britt has certainly thought a lot about. She knows very well firsthand how billions of dollars in federal funding have come from here in Washington back home to Alabama because of Senator Shelby's seniority. Spending more than 4 decades here, that earns seniority, which earns power, and that can direct dollars. So hundreds of school buildings, hundreds of miles of roads, dozens of runways you use every day are in part because of the money Senator Shelby directed back to our state. So how do you replace all that? That's where our conversation with the senator-elect began today. How do you and Senator Tuberville try and make up that gap in what has been significant federal funding our state has benefited from that we won't have that seniority for anymore?
When Senator Shelby walks off the floor of the United States Senate, our state and this nation will be losing a giant and a great statesman. It is not lost on me that I will be number 100 out of 100. And so that means that we're going to have to work that much harder and that much smarter to really work to get things done. That's not going to happen overnight. That will come with building those relationships that are built on trust and respect, so that we can have tough conversations and try to reach solutions to the problems in front of our nation and our state.
Senator-elect Britt says finding ways to provide more and better mental health treatment, securing the border to stop the flow of deadly drugs like fentanyl that's killed more than 300 people in Jefferson County alone this year, and bringing down inflation are core issues she wants to focus on. That's a tabletop issue for most Alabamians. What can folks in this district do to help them?
One thing that we have to do, I believe it goes back to not only being energy independent, but energy dominant. I mean, you look at that effect on inflation and it's real. We're seeing everything from the gas pumps to the grocery store to plastics to everything in between. Hard-working families, they're having to make tough decisions. Another thing that we can do is rein in spending. Right now we are $32 trillion in debt. That affects every single American, and the more we pour out into the economy, the tougher it is going to be to dig ourselves out of this inflation. So we've got to do what's right and smart for Alabamians and Americans so that people can get back on their feet.
Staying connected to her family is a challenge the senator-elect, like every newly elected lawmaker, is working to adjust to.
Ultimately, my husband and I believe that if we don't fight for the American dream, if we don't fight to get our country back on track, there's not going to be anything left for our children. And so making sure that we approach this with knowing that we are doing what's best for them, also getting me as much time as possible when I'm home, being really home. I'm still driving carpool when I'm home and attending the middle school basketball games. They ultimately said, Mom, I mean, why would you do this? Why would you schedule this election night when you knew we had basketball games?
Yep.
So their life, we have worked really hard to make sure that it remains as normal as possible, and knowing that my husband and I are a team and that we are getting up every day and doing what we need to do to make this country and this state better for them, and making sure that Alabama is a place that our kids want to raise their kids.
You can see our entire unedited conversation between the senator-elect and myself coming up very soon in the next hour live on our WVRC News app. And the senator-elect says she's ready to hit the ground running when she is sworn into office officially January the 3rd. Live in Washington, Jonathan Hardison, WBRC, Fox 6 News, on your side.